You idiot! What have you done now?
Nothing. I just talking to a pretty girl is all.
You know, all of these fiendish children sure look a lot like you.
That's not possible. I just met her a few months ago.
You idiot! Don't you know we live in a world full of magic?
That's right. It's also a world where not everyone is what they seem.
You mean she's not really pretty?
Holy crap!
I can't do this anymore. Can we get a random encounter or something, Dungeon Master? We need this skit to be over already.
Welcome to the DM Lair. I'm Luke Hart, and I've been a Dungeon Master since high school. On this channel, I give practical Dungeon Master advice that you can implement at your game table. You're going to find over the course of your career as a Dungeon Master that you'll need to come up with a crap ton of ideas. 40% of those ideas are horrible, 50% are just so-so, and 10% are pure genius. Now, if you visit any online venues such as Reddit and Facebook, you'll find the recounting of these 10% ideas, those of pure genius, because nobody mentions the crap ideas and no one ever got karma on Reddit from being mediocre. Well, today in the Lair, I'm going to tell you the story of how I decided to have a succubus cross paths with Nigel the Bard, one of the esteemed members of the Sword Coast Guard, and the great fun that resulted. And you get to decide if this is a 10% idea or just crap. Real quick though, I want to let you know that my latest D&D 5e adventure, Demons Below, is out now on Drive-Thru RPG. It's designed for a party levels 1 to 4 and features, yep, you guessed it, demons. Link below if you want to check it out. And it features these awesome maps that my dungeon cartographer Lonnie over at Paths of Inspiration on Instagram created. I mean, holy crap, these maps are amazing. I will drop a link down below to Lonnie's Instagram account if you'd like to give her a follow. Now, I'm kicking around the idea of doing a Kickstarter for a D&D adventure module, and I think maps like this would be really slick. Anyway, how about we get to that story you all came here to hear about, eh? Now, I like using random encounters in my games, but one thing I try to do is not make them too terribly predictable. I mean, there's only so many bandits and orcs attacking farmhouses that players can stomach, I think. So I decided to have a succubus disguised as a woman, Lady Nellaby Tharmer, traveling along the road with 2 bodyguards, actually Cambions, who are also disguised as standard soldiers. Lady Tharmer spots my players' PCs as they are traveling back from a mission, and she and her guards rush up to them. Lady Tharmer and her guards are dirty and bloody and claim to have just been attacked by bandits on the road. They beseech the heroes to escort them back to Waterdeep as they simply don't feel safe, what with several of Lady Tharmer's soldiers having fallen to the bandits. Now, I'm expecting my players to be suspicious, to think that something is up. I'm guessing they're going to make some insight checks and discover that Lady Tharmer is lying. At that point, there is more than likely going to be a battle, and my players are going to fight this succubus and the 2 Cambions. However, I made one critical error. I described Lady Tharmer as being extremely attractive, and I totally forgot that Nigel the Bard has a penchant for hitting on and seducing every attractive lady in the game. And thus it is that the Sword Coast Guard agrees to escort Lady Tharmer back to Waterdeep in exchange for, well, her favor. That's right, no reward needed, no gold pieces demanded. I mean, Lady Tharmer said that she was a noblewoman, and she said that she would be extremely grateful if the heroes were to escort her back to the city. And so the players do it. Now, of course, while they're traveling back to Waterdeep, Nigel the Bard takes advantage of every opportunity he has to hit on Lady Tharmer. And this, of course, gets the wheels in my head spinning. What can I do with this? How can I use this sudden change of circumstances to my advantage in this game? You see, I believe that no good opportunity should be passed up, and having a player going in deep with a succubus could pay dividends somehow. It's just a question of figuring out how and when. It's planning the drama. It's planning the perfect backstab. That's the key, you see. This, I feel, is another Dungeon Master tip that we can take away. When your first plan fails, don't pack it in quite yet. There's always a plan B, even if you haven't thought of it yet. But see things through and don't force your plan A. Be patient and the plan B will come to mind. And sometimes the plan B is way better than your plan A. Once they're back in Waterdeep, Lady Tharmer expresses her deep gratitude for what the heroes did for her and throws them a little feast at her manor. The heroes think nothing of it except that they now have an influential contact and friend with the nobles, and they go on about their way. That is, of course, except for Nigel the Bard. You see, Nigel the Bard finds the opportunity to seduce a noblewoman, something that he cannot easily pass up. So he takes a stab at it and succeeds. In fact, over the course of the next few months in the game, Nigel establishes a relationship with Lady Tharmer. The Sword Coast Guard is going on about its normal thing, going on quests, defeating monsters, rescuing princesses, and all that other stuff that heroes do. And during this time, every time the heroes come back to Waterdeep, Nigel the Bard pays a visit to Lady Tharmer. Okay, so this is where my Dungeon Master brain is spinning and spinning, trying to find a way to make all of this intrigue worth it. You see, my players are kind of poking fun at Nigel, saying that he is sleeping around and doing all sorts of horrible things that he probably shouldn't be doing. All in good fun, of course. So it's only correct and proper that I, the Dungeon Master, would do something fun with this situation. Now, I'm thinking to myself, Nigel the Bard is having a relationship with the Succubus. What would be the normal result of this? Now, of course we know that Cambions are fiends that are the result of the union of a mortal and a succubus. Well, that's all good and dandy, but that sort of stuff takes time. I need to speed things up. Fortunately, we are living in a world with magic where everything is a possibility, and growing a Cambion army over the course of a few months is entirely feasible. Well, at some point during all of this, I must have let slip that something was amiss because one of my players, or maybe a couple of them, started chiding Nigel's player, saying that he was creating devil offspring with Lady Tharmer. And the ongoing joke had to do with how many of these devil offspring would be running around Waterdeep by the time they got done. So there comes a point that Lady Tharmer decides that she needs Nigel all to herself, and she needs to get rid of the rest of the Sword Coast Guard. So she calls Nigel to a secret meeting with her, the sort of secret meeting that they are wont to have with great frequency in the various inns and taverns across the city. So naturally, Nigel the Bard thinks nothing of it. However, this secret meeting is unlike their previous secret meetings. In this meeting, Lady Tharmer instructs Nigel the Bard that he is to have his companions come to her manor tonight without their weapons for a feast. She is very clear that they should not bring their weapons. Now, Nigel himself is already suspicious of Lady Tharmer and knows that something very, very wrong is going on. That doesn't mean that he controls his base impulses, but it does mean that he is not going to lead his party into what must surely be a trap. So he refuses. This, of course, is unacceptable to Lady Tharmer, so she moves in to give Nigel a kiss. But this kiss is not any kiss. This is the kiss of persuasion, magical persuasion, that is. Nigel is charmed and then subject to Lady Tharmer's every whim. She instructs Nigel to bring her companions to her manor at the appointed time without their weapons. And Nigel, of course, tells his love that he shall do it. Now, the rest of the heroes of the Sword Coast Guard are more than suspicious. They know it is almost assuredly a trap. However, they figure that the best way to take care of the threat is to walk into the trap and spring it, with their weapons, I might add. Now, I want to point something out here. I was using my players' actions to influence and change the game world. What Nigel was doing had a direct impact on how things were playing out. Furthermore, because he was responsible for the things that were going on, he and the rest of the players likewise felt responsible for fixing the problem. My point is that this is an example of how to get your players invested in the game. This is how to make them feel like they have a stake in things. They feel like it's important that they do a thing and they are responsible for doing it, that they must do it. When you can do things like this in your game and get your players to demand to take care of an issue that they themselves caused or had a hand in or somehow feel responsible for, then you no longer need to worry about your players ignoring your plot hooks. You no longer have to strong arm them into doing the adventure that you created. If you can get your players to actually care about what's going on in the game and want to be involved with it, then 90% of the problems that you might otherwise have as a dungeon master are solved. So the heroes are in Lady Tharmar's manor in the library, and Lady Tharmar reveals her true self, a grand succubus from the Nine Hells, and her servants promptly transform into Cambions, many of whom, I might add, are Nigel's children and look a lot like him. A wonderful battle breaks out with the heroes of the Sword Coast Guard arrayed against the succubus and Nigel's children. Nigel, of course, shows no shame, and at some point in the battle uses greater invisibility to flee and save his own neck. You see, this of course is another reoccurring theme in my game with Nigel. Not only does he seduce any beautiful woman that he comes across, but he also uses greater invisibility in almost every single battle. I cannot tell you how much fun the other players and I have chiding Nigel's player about this. In fact, Nigel later on in the campaign ends up dying, and we continue making the greater invisibility jokes with his new character. It's like one of those gifts that just keeps on giving. And if you think that we are cruel and mean-spirited picking on Nigel like this, you're absolutely 100% right, and we are seeking counseling on it. It's just not doing much good. Anyway, yeah, battle with the succubus and her Cambion army. It turns out that the Sword Coast Guard is too powerful for Lady Tharmar and Nigel's children, so the succubus and the Cambions flee through portals and retreat to the Nine Hells. The heroes explore the rest of the manor and find that held prisoner in one of the rooms is the real Lady Tharmar and several of her servants. She of course rewards them nicely for rescuing her. However, poor Nigel misses his Lady Tharmar and his children. I mean, he never did really get to meet his children. And you see, now something else really marvelous happened. I have a future villain. In fact, an army of future villains at my disposal. It has been quite some time since all of this happened in my game, but you had better well believe that I'm holding on to this succubus and her Cambion army for just the perfect moment to reintroduce into the game. And if you're interested in seeing that stuff unfold, you can watch my Sword Coast Guard game sessions over on my second YouTube channel, the DM Lair Streams. Link conveniently placed down below. So yeah, let me know if this was a 10% idea of pure genius or just complete crap. Next week, we'll be talking about ways you can encourage your players to roleplay more.
But until then, click right here to hear about the time I played Gary the Intern in an Adventures League game and nearly broke the Dungeon Master. And until next time, let's play D&D.